Imagine stepping into one of the most dangerous no-man's lands in the world. A place where ruthless cartels rule with an iron fist, extreme desert heat claims lives daily, and law enforcement struggles to maintain control. This is the U.S. Mexico border, one of the most perilous regions on Earth. Every year, thousands of people risk everything to cross this deadly frontier, but many never make it to the other side. Some fall victim to violent gangs, others succumb to the unforgiving desert, and some simply vanish without a trace. But what are the deadliest locations along this 2,000-mile stretch? Today we'll reveal the 10 most dangerous places on the U.S. Mexico border, exposing the horrifying realities of drug trafficking routes, human smuggling corridors, and cartel battlegrounds. You'll discover ghost towns overrun by criminals, rivers where bodies are constantly found, and highways where even law enforcement fears to patrol after dark. These places aren't just dangerous, they are war zones where life has little value. What makes them so lethal? And why do so many people still risk passing through them? Stay with us until the end because the number one spot is far worse than you can imagine. But before we begin, here's a question. If you had to cross the border, which route would you take? Let us know in the comments. Now, let's start with number 10, the first of the most dangerous places you should never step foot in. 10. Tijuana, Baja California. Tijuana is often associated with nightlife, cheap drinks, and tourism. But behind the neon lights, this city holds a dark and dangerous reality. It's the busiest border crossing between the U.S. and Mexico, but also one of the deadliest. Cartel violence is rampant, with rival groups constantly battling for control over smuggling routes. Shootouts in broad daylight, kidnappings, and bodies dumped on roadsides are regular occurrences. The Sinaloa Cartel and Jalisco New Generation Cartel (CJNG) dominate this region, and even tourists have been caught in the crossfire. The infamous Tijuana River Canal is a hotspot for human trafficking, drug use, and violent crime. Many migrants seeking to cross into the U.S. end up trapped here, either falling victim to gangs or forced into illegal activities. Law enforcement struggles to contain the violence, and corruption runs deep. Even the police fear certain areas of Tijuana, knowing that stepping in the wrong place could cost them their lives. 9. Sasabe, Arizona. Sasabe is a tiny, seemingly insignificant desert town, but don't let its size fool you. This is one of the most dangerous human smuggling corridors along the entire border. Located in a remote part of Arizona, Sasabe is a hotspot for illegal crossings, and many migrants who attempt to pass through here never make it out alive. The harsh Sonoran Desert is a death trap, with temperatures soaring above 110 degrees Fahrenheit 43 degrees Celsius in the summer. Dehydration, exhaustion, and exposure claim hundreds of lives every year. But the desert isn't the only danger. Cartels and human traffickers control the routes, often deceiving desperate migrants with false promises of a safe passage. Those who can't pay are left to die in the wilderness or worse, kidnapped and forced into slave labor. Even the U.S. Border Patrol warns that this area is one of the most dangerous for both migrants and agents. The remoteness of Sasabe makes it nearly impossible to escape once you're trapped in its deadly landscape. 8. The Rio Grande, Texas. The Rio Grande is more than just a river, it's a graveyard for countless migrants. Stretching along Texas, this river marks a major section of the border, but its waters are as dangerous as the gangs that lurk nearby. Every year, hundreds drown trying to cross, underestimating the powerful currents. The muddy waters conceal jagged rocks, debris, and hidden whirlpools that drag people under in seconds. Many smugglers force migrants into the water, knowing full well they won't make it across. Cartels also use the Rio Grande for drug trafficking, with boats frequently crossing at night. Shootouts between smugglers and law enforcement are common, and the riverbanks are often littered with abandoned life vests and personal belongings of those who didn't survive. One of the deadliest areas is Eagle Pass, where the water is deceptively calm but filled with hidden dangers. Locals often report hearing cries for help coming from the river, only to find no one there. 7. Ciudad Juárez, Chihuahua. Ciudad Juárez is one of the most violent cities in the world, and for good reason. Just across from El Paso, Texas, Juárez has long been a battleground for cartel wars, with murder rates higher than those of some war zones. The Juárez Cartel and Sinaloa Cartel are locked in a bloody turf war over drug trafficking routes. The result? Daily executions, mass graves, and an overwhelming climate of fear. Bodies are often found hanging from bridges, sending a brutal message to rivals. For women, the situation is even worse. Juárez is infamous for its alarming number of femicides, with thousands of women disappearing every year. Many believe human trafficking rings operate freely in the city, preying on the vulnerable. Even journalists covering crime in Juárez have been assassinated for exposing cartel activities. It's a place where trust is non-existent, and even speaking the wrong words can get you killed. 6. The Highway of Death, Mexican Federal Highway 85. This infamous stretch of Mexican Federal Highway 85 is one of the most terrifying roads in the world. Connecting Nuevo Laredo to Monterrey, this highway is ruled by Los Zetas, one of Mexico's most brutal cartels. Drivers and travelers risk their lives every time they set foot on this road. Armed groups patrol the highway, ambushing vehicles and taking hostages. Many are never seen again. Kidnappings here are so common that locals avoid traveling at night entirely. One of the most horrifying aspects is that cartel members disguise themselves as police or military personnel. Fake roadblocks and staged arrests lead unsuspecting victims into deadly traps. Even bus passengers aren't safe. Entire buses have been hijacked, with passengers later found executed in mass graves. The highway is so feared that some truck drivers travel in convoys, hoping that strength in numbers will keep them safe. But even that isn't a guarantee when dealing with a cartel as ruthless as Los Zetas. 5. Nogales, Sonora and Arizona. Nogales is a city split in two, one side in Mexico, the other in the U.S. But while the Arizona side is relatively safe, the Mexican side is a different story. This city is a key smuggling hub for both drugs and human trafficking. The cartel presence here is overwhelming, with tunnels constantly being discovered beneath the border, allowing criminals to move narcotics undetected. These tunnels are dark, unstable and deadly, often collapsing and trapping those inside. In broad daylight, violent clashes between Sinaloa Cartel operatives and Mexican authorities erupt in the streets. Migrants attempting to cross through Nogales often fall victim to coyotes, smugglers, who abandon them in the desert or even sell them to criminal organizations. With assassinations, kidnappings, and cartel checkpoints, Nogales is a hotspot of violence that many never escape from. 4. Reynosa, Tamaulipas. Just across from McAllen, Texas, Reynosa is one of the most terrifying cities on the border. It's not just cartel violence that makes it dangerous, it's the constant abductions, random shootouts, and the overwhelming sense of lawlessness. Los Zetas and the Gulf Cartel are at war here, and civilians are frequent collateral damage. A wrong turn into the wrong neighborhood can mean instant death. Gunfights between cartel members and police happen almost daily, with burned-out cars left as grim reminders of the bloodshed. Many migrants are kidnapped upon arriving in Reynosa, held for ransom or forced into modern-day slavery. The streets are so unsafe that even locals avoid driving at night, knowing they could be stopped by gunmen at any moment. Reynosa is a city where fear controls everything, and escape is nearly impossible. 3. San Luis Rio Colorado, Sonora. At first glance, San Luis Rio Colorado looks like a quiet desert town. But beneath the surface, this place is one of the deadliest trafficking routes on the border. Its strategic location makes it a prime drug smuggling corridor, with heavily armed cartel groups constantly fighting for control. The CJNG and Sinaloa Cartel are at war here, leading to regular mass executions. Bodies are frequently discovered buried in the desert, discarded like trash. The real horror comes from the merciless methods cartels use. Many victims are tied up, tortured, and executed in the middle of the desert, where no one will ever find them. Even authorities hesitate to patrol certain areas, knowing that once you're marked by the cartels, there's no way out. For those caught in the crossfire, San Luis Rio Colorado is a one-way ticket to death. 2. Nuevo Laredo, Tamaulipas. Nuevo Laredo is a city completely overrun by one of the most feared cartels in the world, Los Zetas. This city is so dangerous that even Mexican military forces struggle to maintain order. Los Zetas operate with military precision, controlling drug smuggling, extortion, and human trafficking with brutal efficiency. One of the most feared aspects of Nuevo Laredo is the forced disappearances. Many who enter the city, whether migrants, journalists, or rival cartel members, are never seen again. Mass graves are frequently discovered in the outskirts, filled with victims who were tortured before being executed. Local police forces are either bribed or assassinated, and nighttime travel is a death sentence. The presence of military checkpoints doesn't guarantee safety. Many of them are fake, set up by cartels to lure victims into their traps. Nuevo Laredo isn't just dangerous, it's a war zone where only the ruthless survive. 1. The most dangerous place on the U.S. Mexico border, the Cartel Triangle. If there's one place you should never set foot in, it's the Cartel Triangle, a deadly region spanning Matamoros, Reynosa, and Nuevo Laredo in Tamaulipas. This area is completely dominated by the Gulf Cartel and Los Zetas, two of the most brutal criminal organizations in the world. It's a hotspot for mass kidnappings, executions, and drug trafficking. Migrants, journalists, and even Mexican military forces avoid these roads, knowing that once you're caught inside, there's no way out. The infamous La Frontera Chica is a corridor where cartels hunt down and execute enemies. Burned-out cars, unmarked graves, and cartel roadblocks serve as grim reminders of their power. Entire police forces have fled their posts, unable to challenge the criminals who rule this region with absolute terror. For those who cross into the cartel triangle, there are only two ways out: through ransom money or in a body bag. The U.S. Mexico border is more than just a line on a map. It's a battlefield of survival, power, and fear. From cartel-controlled cities to deadly deserts, each place on this list tells a story of violence, desperation, and danger. So now the question remains, would you ever risk stepping into any of these places? Let us know in the comments. And if you found this video shocking, make sure to subscribe for more eye-opening content. Stay safe and thanks for watching.